Aspire to a clean career, leaving no shame for descendants. Hello everyone. Welcome to Encountering Chinese Case Stories. Cases judged by Bao Gong. Today, I'm going to bring you a story called White Pagoda Alley. Under Bao Gong's governance, the city flourished with peace and prosperity, and the criminals dared not commit crimes anymore. He wholeheartedly served the people, ensuring that every case was swiftly resolved, leaving none unresolved. On the 15th day of the first lunar month, Bao Gong led his bailiffs to the city god temple to pray for blessings. After the ritual, as they passed by the entrance of White Pagoda Alley, they heard a woman weeping. However, her cries were not solely of sorrow but also tinged with a strange mix of emotions. Perplexed by this, Bao Gong returned to the yamen and summoned the duty officer, Zheng Cheng, asking, "Just now, at the entrance of White Pagoda Alley, I heard a woman weeping. Do you know who she is and why she was crying there?" Zheng Cheng replied, "That should be Liu Shi's wife. A few days ago, Liu Shi suddenly passed away for unknown reasons, and his wife, Wu, often weeps near their home in White Pagoda Alley." Intrigued, Bao Gong pondered. Liu Shi died so suddenly, yet even the bailiffs don't know the cause of his death. And Wu's crying, though audible, lacks genuine grief. Could it be that Liu Shi was murdered, and Wu is the culprit? With this suspicion in mind, he immediately summoned Wu to the courtroom and questioned her about Liu Shi's sudden demise. Wu confessed, "My husband, Liu Shi, earned a living by selling vegetables. Last month, he fell ill and passed away shortly thereafter. I buried him in the cemetery 5 miles south of the South Gate. With a young son to care for, I felt lost and sorrowful at the thought of our predicament." Bao Gong found her explanation peculiar. He observed Wu closely and noticed that she wore elaborate makeup on her face. It struck him as odd that a grieving widow would bother with cosmetics during the mourning period. Suspecting foul play, he summoned the coroner, Chen Shang, and accompanied by Wu, they went to the cemetery to open Liu Shi's coffin for further examination to see if there were any signs of injury on his body. Upon his return, Chen Shang reported, "There were no signs of injury on Liu Shi's body. He seems to have died of a sudden illness." Still skeptical, Bao Gong slammed his fist on the table and rebuked Chen Shang, saying, "Chen Shang, you must not have examined the body carefully and hastily concluded the results. If within 3 days, you still make no progress in the examination, I will charge you with dereliction of duty." Troubled by this, Chen Shang returned home that evening with a furrowed brow. His wife, Yang, asked him about his distress, and Chen Shang recounted the events of the day. After listening, Yang pondered for a moment and said, "Have you examined the deceased's nasal cavity? I've heard that some people use iron nails inserted into the nostrils to kill, leaving no visible marks on the body's surface. Why don't you go back and check?" Intrigued by her suggestion, Chen Shang complied and revisited the coffin. To his astonishment, he discovered 2 iron nails inserted deep into Liu Shi's nasal cavity, reaching into the back of his head. Chen Sheng immediately removed the nails and reported his findings to Bao Gong. Bao Gong promptly summoned Wu again for questioning. Initially reluctant, Wu eventually confessed, revealing that she, along with a butcher named Zhang, had conspired to murder Liu Shi due to their adulterous relationship and fear of Liu Shi's discovery. Thus, the truth of the case came to light. After the case was fully documented, Wu and the butcher Zhang were sentenced to death for their conspiracy to murder Liu Shi, their execution carried out immediately by the executioner as ordered. However, Bao Gong remained doubtful. He continued to question Chen Sheng, asking, "Who taught you to examine the deceased's nasal cavity?" Chen Sheng replied, "That day, I received orders to inspect Liu Shi's body, but found no obvious signs of injury. However, upon my return, you reprimanded me, demanding that I must find out the true cause of death, which left me deeply troubled. When I got home, I shared the matter with my wife, and to my surprise, she had a broad knowledge and suggested examining the deceased's nasal cavity, which eventually led to a breakthrough." Bao Gong exclaimed, "Your wife's insight is remarkable, clearly not an ordinary woman. Fetch her, I want to reward her." Shortly after, Yang arrived at the yamen, and Bao Gong rewarded her with 5 coins and a bottle of wine, which she happily accepted. As Yang was about to leave the yamen, Bao Gong stopped her and asked, "Were you and Chen Sheng legally married, or did you become a couple later?" Yang replied, "My former husband has long passed away. I married Chen Sheng afterward." Bao Gong continued, "What was your former husband's name?" Yang answered, "His surname was Mei, and his given name was Xiaojiu." Bao Gong further inquired, "And what was the cause of his death?" Upon hearing Bao Gong's detailed questions, Yang's expression changed, and trembling, she replied, "He suffered from mental illness and eventually passed away. He was buried in a neglected cemetery outside the south gate." Bao Gong remarked, "So your former husband's cause of death is also unclear." Thus, Bao Gong ordered Constable Wang Liang to accompany Yang to the neglected cemetery to inspect Mei Xiaojiu's body. Along the way, Yang pondered, "There are so many graves in that neglected cemetery. It's impossible for every corpse to have nails inserted into their nasal cavities. I might as well point out a random grave to deceive them." Consequently, at the neglected cemetery, she arbitrarily pointed to someone else's grave for the constable. Wang Liang dug up the grave but found no signs of injury on the corpse, nor were there any iron nails in the nasal cavity. Yang angrily exclaimed, "People always say that Bao Gong is fair and just, never wronging anyone. But today, it's like he's trying to force me to death." As Wang Liang felt helpless, suddenly an old man approached from nearby. The old man, over 70 years old, leaned on a cane. He inquired about Wang Liang's purpose there, and Wang Liang explained the search for Mei Xiaojiu's grave. After hearing this, the old man pointed at Yang and said, You shouldn't randomly point to other people's graves, exposing unrelated deceased individuals and depriving them of peace. He then pointed to another grave and told Wang Liang, "This is indeed Mei Xiaojiu's grave." After speaking, the old man turned and walked away, disappearing in no time. Following this, Wang Liang dug up Mei Xiaojiu's grave and found 2 iron nails inserted into his nasal cavity. Wang Liang returned to the yamen with Yang and reported the matter to Bao Gong. After thorough interrogation, Bao Gong confirmed that Yang had also conspired to murder her former husband in the same manner. Eventually, Yang was sentenced to death, and the sentence was carried out immediately. As the news spread, people found this case truly bizarre. Alright. Today's case story, White Pagoda Alley, concludes here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave your comments and share with others. See you again in the next issue.